Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and on this channel, we talk a lot about journalists who don't tell the truth. Specifically, Taylor Lorenz, previously of the New York Times, now on the Washington Post. She's in with that crew with Cat 10 Barge and all the people who are pro-Amber. I'm very excited because we have someone here who is suing Taylor and the New York Times, which is not an easy thing to do. So happy to have Ariadna Jacob here. How are you doing, Ari?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Look, there's a lot to break down. For those that don't know, this is an important story that you hear to get her side of this because Taylor and obviously the mainstream media are pointing in another way. But I wanted to bring Ari on here to share her side of this case and why she's suing and why the case is not actually dismissed, which is what Taylor and others are putting out there. Let's go back if we can, Ari. I want to go through. Here's Ari on Twitter. You can follow her and get updates on this as we go. But this is the article in question. So in the New York Times back in, what was the date on this? This was August of 2020, published this article about basically slamming you. Taylor wrote this article as sort of an expose about a TikTok house that was with influencers managed by Ari. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, but some serious allegations were leveled against you in this piece, basically saying you weren't paying these people, they weren't getting their opportunities that they were promised, they were not getting the brand deals that they were supposed to get, you were secretly filming them, you actually apparently leaked nudes for revenge against one of them, you were leaving these girls in houses without electricity and water during the pandemic. It's a really nasty read. The people you knew, Gary, he's a big guy in this space. What's his name? Gary V. You're just using him. You don't have actually any, access to him, etc. A lot of really bold claims that clearly did not help your career moving forward. Have I summed it up correctly?
Yeah.
Now, was any of this true?
No, I mean, not even. I think Taylor has a mixture here of things that are completely false and things that imply negative things that were not true.
Now, I know you're in current litigation, so I know you got to be careful probably on certain things you say, and I appreciate you being here because there's a lot to break down here. Regarding this case, she's given us some proof examples that are in this case that prove that Taylor was lying. We're going to go through that. But I want to sort of fast forward a bit to just explain that if you're believing what the media has told you and what Taylor has put out there, this tweet has now since been deleted. But for over a year, the right-wing media has been relentlessly covering this bogus lawsuit. Today, the judge dismissed it, this case against the New York Times and her. What's just weird to me is like, I didn't know your politics. I don't know your politics. What does this have to do with politics? I don't know. But of course, I already see her spin. This is a conservative conspiracy against the left-wing media. You guys must support me, blah, blah, blah. I'm a victim. When that is ridiculous because even as the press is saying it's dismissed this case, that's not actually true, correct? You're actually still pursuing this case. Certain elements of it were sort of addressed or said cannot be addressed in the lawsuit. However, as Viva here eloquently puts, judge specifically identified actionable claims and gave permission to amend. So there is no victory lap for Taylor as she is doing, correct?
Yeah, I would say you got that pretty spot on.
So what can you explain to sort of us, or if whatever you're able, like what was wrong or what's still on deck? Can you sort of explain the process of where you are today in your lawsuit?
Yeah, so I would encourage anybody that's just interested in understanding how the media works to read the amended complaint. I know it's long, but this time around, I have a whole team of attorneys working on this. It's a 55, I think, page complaint. And we didn't have to appeal it and then, go through it again. So this time, I believe the lawyers just put everything possibly in that would show what actually happened. And I think they did a really incredible job because this time there's screenshots in there, there's like receipts. And when you read this story, from the legal perspective, I don't know how you come out of it with the different opinion, I guess, than what the truth of what actually happened is. But I don't blame anybody who read the initial article to think I'm a terrible person. I think also, one important thing to recognize is that in 2020, during the pandemic, and basically there was no touring going on in Hollywood. There's no music, there's no concerts, no music touring, no making movies, no making TV shows. So the entertainment industry is really hungry for, talent agents were getting laid off left and right. And so this was a very lucrative industry to be in when all this went down. So there was a lot of money involved. I represented Charlie and Dixie D'Amelio, who since 2020, I think have made $70 million. So it's not chump change.
No, it's interesting because money seems to be your critics, right, are out there just not even trying to read the case or get the evidence. They just are like, well, who's backing this attack on Taylor and the media? This must be some right-wing conspiracy group paying you and funding this, and that's what it is because you're on a life's mission to destroy Taylor. I mean, what? She's the one who wrote the article and made these weird decisions, right?
Absolutely,
so
and I would definitely say for people watching this, thinking like, how do I know if I'm about to get canceled? And one of the biggest things is to understand who are these journalists connected to. If you go on Taylor Lorenz's Twitter page, she even has a list of all the people she admires or she follows in journalism. And so, it's just important to know who you're dealing with and their connections. It's kind of like when people look at like Monsanto and they own all these different food companies, it's very similar like that in the media and just the connections that are involved. So, but I did find it interesting. I think you had clicked on it that, Peter Thiel, who's a billionaire, he funded a lawsuit against Gawker for Hulk Hogan. And right here, he says why he did it is because even Hulk Hogan couldn't afford his defense. You can play, it's really short.
In the justice of the case more and more because there were so many different people that you interacted with who had been destroyed. In many cases, in most cases, it was not super prominent people. It was or super wealthy people. It was people who couldn't afford to do anything. And one of the striking things is that if you're middle class, if you're upper middle class, if you're a single-digit millionaire like Hulk Hogan, you have no effective access to our legal system. It costs too much. This was the modus operandi of Gawker in large part. It was to go after people who had no chance of fighting back in the justice of the case.
Scary stuff indeed. So you are fighting back, and I think we should applaud you for doing so.
Thank you.
And I want to go through sort of the allegations here and sort of your respondents. So as you've gone through this piece, it's, I guess, addressing some of this. Your amended complaint really does address this fact. Let's start with the fact that you didn't pay them. That's completely nonsense, right? As your amended shows. Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen here. I'm jumping ahead. They were getting dozens of brand deals, correct?
Yeah. So this shows screenshots of one of the influencers who had 10 million followers. So somebody like Taylor should have checked her sources, is what the complaint says.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to check her sources. We've all had that problem with her.
Yeah.
So the brand deals is sort of silly. I mean, I don't know this situation. Again, you guys go do your research, make your own decision. But even from my own experience in working with influencers specifically, it's all about usually young, inexperienced creators who are, talented, but don't know how the business works. They want managers, they want agents. And then once they get a manager, they don't want to pay those managers and agents. And the reality of the business is, agencies, management, they help to bring in deals. They help you bring more, but you have to pay them. And there are contracts and there are things that sort of connect these things. So as I read this piece, Ari, I was just like, I didn't know you even, but I'm like, this sounded like a bunch of whining creators, to be honest, that they were just sort of sour grapes or whatever, maybe about certain things that may have happened or may not have happened. But overall, the way that she wrote this hit piece against you was this clear agenda that you were manipulating, you were a predator, and you were a liar. And I think the one thing I want to get to quick, and then I want to respond because I want to try and share some of this idea that you didn't know who Gary Vee was. I mean, you shared with me, here's proof, not only that you knew Gary Vee, but that he was helping one of your clients get a Super Bowl commercial.
And to be very frank, because of my relationship with Ari, I want to help my friends through this, and I think Britney has caught a cultural enough moment, and I think the fact that she would be in a Super Bowl spot would change her career, because then that would open up every brand deal.
We're so excited.
So excited. And then so here he is again.
Where's Ari?
Right here.
There she is. Okay, great. Well, we're really excited that we were able to put this together. Gary and I have both known Ari for a very, very long time. We're huge fans.
So here you are connecting with a lot of your, I imagine, talent here with him, Zoom chat. So this idea that she sort of tries to imply that, you know, that you didn't really know him, and that was just sort of you were using that name to get that you weren't mentored by him, and that therefore this nonsense.
And the lawsuit has those videos linked, and you can hear it. Gary says, this is a time where I can pay back a friend who I adore. And so he's essentially telling Britney, who's also mentioned in this article, Miss Tomlinson, that because of his relationship with me and because of him being able to pay back a friend that he adores, he's going to, that's what he's saying. And so for her, and what people need to understand is this is a very sort of prolific person in this industry. And so for Gary Vee to champion you means a lot. And for him to not champion, for somebody to say that you're using his name sort of to grift off of him and pretty much a name drop, that is, it basically tears away all your credibility to sign clients, to work with major brands. I mean, Gary has like a Madison Avenue style agency that does digital for some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah, and bringing him in the middle of this is probably not even helpful for you. I'm sure you don't even want to do that. It just
well, it just broke my heart. He was my mentor. Yeah. You could see in that video, I almost started crying, because it's like it was such validation that he did care about me, and that I thought we had a good relationship, but for him to tell the client that to her face, saying, "Hey, you're great and everything, but I'm doing this for Ari," it really meant a lot.
Yeah, and it's in this industry, when you're labeled the toxic thing that Taylor does, and it puts even your own friends. I've experienced this. They doubt or they question, and then that really does cause conflicts to your career. I want to continue to help sort of prove what Taylor was writing was false. So this allegation that there were secretly filmed, this is from your amended complaint, patently false. The House had an iPad entrance with a system that required them to sign, or even guests to sign a liability release, stating the house's video surveillance, all rooms other than restrooms and showers. And I mean, of course, you're filming, you need to have this liability. That would make sense. The TikTok house, everything's being filmed at some point or another. Duh. They didn't read the stuff. This property has video surveillance inclusive of any bedrooms, the only exception being private areas of restrooms and showers. And so they all knew what they were getting into. And so they're all complaining at the end. So, I mean, the amendment really goes through and proves a lot of stuff. I encourage you guys to go through and read this, but I for levity's sake, brevity's sake, I want to try to get to the core issue here, which is, Taylor's not very credible. And here was one person you brought this to my attention, and I want to make sure we share it. This was this is an influencer, Adam, correct?
Yeah, Adam Cohen.
And so Adam Cohen was here basically acknowledging that Taylor, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to send it back to you, but to set it up for everybody who doesn't understand, Taylor was basically trying to reach out everybody in this house or manage clients of Ari's.
There's 3 different houses. Yeah, and he was starting his own. So
basically Taylor comes after this guy and is basically trying to get dirt from him about you. And don't let them be, show his boss, And then around this time, she was basically just pushing. I felt pressured to give Lorenz negative information about Miss Jacob. I had not experienced those negative interactions. She kept sharing them to him, trying to say, well, you must have, whatever. At any point during the 7 months, I had been working closely with Miss Jacob. I did not witness her behave unprofessionally around any creators. My response to Miss Lorenz, and I knew that Miss Jacob, for who she was, and I didn't experience what she was describing. Miss Lorenz continued to share more negative information for a few minutes, but I did not go along with what she was saying. This seemed to anger Miss Lorenz, and she seemed pissed. She became very short with me after I did not share negative info about my manager, and we ended the conversation. on or around October 12th, not long after my conversation. She texted me, "So selfish and irresponsible, Adam. I'm very disappointed to see this," in reference to a tweet about an Alpha House, which was something else he had done. Sort of basically, from as I read this whole exchange in the text of her sort of shaming him, she basically didn't get what she wanted and then kicked him to the curb and then started to make him the enemy. Is that how you took this?
A 17-year-old, a kid that just turned 17 that was previously 16 that she had spoken to.
I mean, I don't know why a journalist bullying and shaming a 17-year-old to come to basically say things they don't feel about you this really upset me when you shared this to me. Like, I mean, we've summed it up, I guess. How effed up is this?
Yeah. And so, obviously my initial sort of gut reaction was hurt when I read what some of these influencers said, but these are not people that have been in the entertainment industry very long. They're, I think, being sort of, leveraged and used, dangling a carrot of fame, in order for a journalist to, get them to say what they want them to say. And so, I was hurt by what they did, but I was a kid too. And I think sometimes when you're young and you just kind of go along with it's just like high school behavior is sort of how some of these journalists operate, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it's super unfortunate. And one more thing I wanted to add, you shared, there's a lot to go through here, but I'm trying to get to the best of most important pieces. I think that really nip at her credibility was another case you had shared, about Ari basically this guy Ari Aria, thank you. Taylor was given information from a source named Kyle. You found this out, and basically Kyle, the informant, says, "I was a source for Miss Lorenz on a New York Times reporter piece where she labeled him a fraud," is what she did, like really nastily in a tweet exchange, scamming people, pyramid scheme, whatever. And the informant's like, "Never, ever did we say this or did this happen." And in fact, as
her source said, we never gave her any evidence to confirm that he defrauded anyone. So imagine being then accused in the New York Times of defrauding people and then being at the airport and having, the DOJ hand you a piece of paper saying you're under investigation. And in his lawsuit, I'm pretty sure Aria there's a piece that said somebody claimed that Taylor messaged them, DM'd them and said, "Hey, don't tell anyone, but here's the email of an FBI person. You can email them my story about Aria." It's like, why are you getting that involved? It's like, you want somebody to go to jail? I mean, maybe she's so convinced of her lies,
I mean, it happens, right? It's like,
certainly not in my case. I know that there's malice there because there was so much evidence, that she had access to and that she knew. But
yeah, well, I mean, she's got to believe the lies to sort of create the narrative is what I mean, though. And that's part, I think also it helps with the malice of just she's got to continue.
Or maybe it's a sense of power of saying, I can get anyone to believe anything I say.
And you can't back down because it's your whole performance that you're giving to social media and your followers of, this is the list of people that I support. And these people aren't. They go against that list of, my politics, etc. It's just scary that this is what, these are journalists, the Washington Post, the New York Times. I had an NBC journalist come after me and just blatant lies. And what's so scary is I think really eloquently put, and I guess it was in this clip too, about the Gawker clip. It's really hard to go against them, guys.
Well,
it's really hard to go against them.
If you go back to the tweet that Taylor did with her early victory lap and you click forward to the next picture.
Yes, here we go. I have it here.
So, yes. Okay. Filing a lawsuit, which anyone can do, then endlessly doing press is meant to cause reputational harm to me. That is the goal. Will these outlets update their story? First of all, she has the Wrap in there, which is owned by Sharon Waxman, who's very liberal. So that is not the right-wing media going after her. But the fact that she says anyone can file a lawsuit is just really telling of what she's trying to purport to other people that don't know enough about this, because God knows I didn't know how difficult. When this happens to you, you go to an attorney and you're like, this isn't true. This is not fair. And they pat you on the back and they go, you can't sue the New York Times. Good luck with that, honey. I mean, they didn't say that to me, but that's what I heard. You know what I mean? Because it's very like, it's very much like you're doing something that's almost impossible. The New York Times, from an article I read from the New York Times, I think it said that the New York Times hasn't lost a defamation lawsuit in the United States since the 1960s. So it's not easy. And then I think whatever the next one is, she's
she's playing the victim here, and she's just basically scaring like, hey, I work for the big press. I can say whatever the hell I want, and you can't come after me, because these are smear campaigns, reputational attacks against her, not against you. Forget whether her sources or her own brain and bias are wrong. She's the one who's now being targeted. Newsrooms must be clear-eyed about these. It's wow. I'm so grateful to the New York Times for their support and the court for dismissing this baseless case. Again, a lie, because they didn't dismiss the case. So even now she's caught again, lying again. It's like the credibility is out the window. Why do you get to be the authority police? I want to give you the last line as we wrap it up. What do you want audiences to know? Where can they find you? How can they help?
I'm Little Miss Jacob on pretty much every platform. I'm launching a podcast next month. It's called Little Miss Radioactive. And we're going to interview just people who have been canceled and hear stories of how people came back, and hopefully help people understand how the media operates and help expose. I don't think Taylor is the first or the last journalist that needs to be held accountable for lies. But hopefully the more people sort of understand, how these people operate, we can kind of work together to hopefully give, independent journalists and independent creators tools to use so this type of thing doesn't happen to you. I will say one of the things that I learned quickly is that the way to sometimes beat these people to a negative story is to basically scoop them. So if you know that they're going to write something about you, I think it's not traditional the way PR is, because they say don't create the Streisand effect and create attention. But I think kind of like a Dave Portnoy, it's like emergency press conference. This is what's going to be said about me, and I'm going to get ahead of it. And sometimes if you get ahead of it and you got people behind you, then it's not really worth them doing the story. So hopefully we can scoop them on stories about you, about that umbrella guy, about the Oshry sisters that I think Taylor's trying to do a story about. We all kind of need to stick together.
Yeah, it's a really good point. As someone had to wait a year, it did not help me. I mean, it helped me mentally, like to get offline, but I agree. You got to respond immediately, especially if it's not true. If you're caught doing something you did wrong, you got to own it. Just own it.
Yes,
take that accountability.
Absolutely.
Too many people are using cancel culture, and I'd love to come on the show and talk about it as someone who's there.
But have you on.
Too many people use cancel culture now as an excuse to get away with bad behavior, and it frustrates me because there are real instances where it's happening. But yeah, if you didn't do it, you got to come out hard and fast to beat it. And I think that's good advice. Yeah. If you want to follow what the updates of this case, you can go follow Ari over on Twitter. Like she said, Little Miss Jacob, thank you for coming here. Keep us updated. Come on anytime you have an update. Taylor, I've offered you to come on the show. We've even DM'd a little bit way back, and now I'm supporting Johnny, so therefore I guess I'm toxic. But man, I'd love to challenge you on this one, ask some questions. But I'm gonna guess she's gonna say legally she can't. Open invites, everybody here. But thank you, Ari, for coming and sharing your side and your story of this.
Thanks for having me.
I don't trust Taylor, so I got your back on this. Keep us posted. And if you want to support her, go follow. In the meanwhile, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for all alerts, smash that like button, and leave a comment down below on your thoughts. Are you surprised? I bet you're not. We'll see you Monday. I'm back in the studio live Monday. I'll see you guys there. Thank you guys so much for watching.